Again, about the popes, here's something I want you to remember. Pope, who is the pope who ordered the first crusade? Pope. His name was Urban. And I'll be asking a matching question about the popes. There's four I want you to remember. One of them I wrote on the board last week. Pope Gregory the Great instituted the calendar we still use. Pope Urban ordered the first crusade. The pope who persuaded Attila the Hun not to attack Rome was Pope Leo. Pope Gregory VII, he insisted the church should appoint its own officials. And eventually the Concordat of Worms, sometimes pronounced Worms, sometimes pronounced Worms, reached a compromise where that the church appointed the officials, but the lords had to approve the choice. Today that's been changed to where the church appoints its own officials without approval of the nobility or the royalty. But again, to me, it's a very important part of history because this Western Europe, more than any other place on earth, separated church from state. And you might not realize how important that is, but church and state are two separate issues, two separate entities now. And the church is a voluntary institution. You can join if you want to, or you can either pick what church you want to join or not join at all.
You said this is where the popes were on.
See, there was a conflict. Who should appoint church officials? And at one time, the king said he should. The local nobility said that they should appoint the lower officials. The king should appoint the higher officials. The Pope insisted, no, the church should appoint them. And eventually a compromise was reached.
That's how we got church and state
Separate, yeah. And again, to realize how important this is, I mean, we tried for a while in this country to pass a law against drinking. In the 1920s, the Prohibition era, it failed. Folks, this may be more at home in a theology class. I want to remind you, Christ and the apostles never went to a local magistrate asking a local magistrate to pass laws favoring their morality. They believed that morality was a matter for the church to try to enforce and not for the state. Which is why in this country, I mean, each of us are free to drink as much as we want to, use as much tobacco as we want to, read any kind of literature we want to. I mean, I believe that there should be restrictions on these things, but the restrictions come from within me or within you personally, and they're not imposed by the state. And in some countries, they have laws that you cannot drink, you cannot have pornographic literature, but these countries have lagged behind. I mean, believe it or not, Russia outlaws pornography, outlaws adultery, outlaws, abortion, but they have not progressed as far as Western nations. In our country, you're free to choose what you believe about these things. And in most cases, that's good. Yes?
And I'm backing up a little bit. You said the four popes that you're concerned with.
Pope Leo persuaded Attila not. Which one do you remember?
I got Innocent III. Pope Leo persuaded Attila. Pope Urban started First Crusade. And what was the fourth one?
Pope Gregory, the one I wrote the other day. Pope Gregory, he instituted, I mean, Pope Gregory he's about the only one called the Great. Pope Gregory the Great, and it's been said if all the popes had been as good a man as he was a man in favor of the poor, trying to help the poor. If all the popes had been as good a man as he was, there'd be no Protestant church today. The church might not even have divided.
And this is the calendar we follow today.
Yeah, the Gregorian calendar is the one we follow today. It was much more accurate, or noticed to be more accurate than the Julian calendar set forth by Julius Caesar. All right. Let's see.
test going to be on 12?
Half of the test is on 12 or 13. All right, something else.
How many?
Yeah, that Karuka. That's a foreign word, that's why I've got it here in italics. The Karuka is a type of plow that went deep into the soil, but it required several teams of horses to pull it. You might get 8, 10, and 12 horses pulling one plow, but the plow would get deeper into the soil. Today we use tractors to do the same thing, because it took so long to turn those teams around, the farming in that day tended to resemble strips of bacon. The horses would go for a long way out, then finally turn around and come back, and fields resembled strips of bacon. But the Karuka was a plow, and also they learned how to put the harness on the horse's shoulder rather than on its neck, to where they learned a horse could pull a much heavier load if the harness were down on his shoulder, and he could lean, you might say, into the harness. Oxen were used at first, later horses, because the horse was faster. This period of time we're talking about, between 1000 and 1300, is called the High Middle Ages. Farmers would cooperate with each other. It is also known to be a time of warm weather. Conditions were more settled and peaceful. There was a whole lot more produce. Now, the High Middle Ages ended in the early 1300s with a climate cooling and with the Black Death. And it makes you wonder, if the climate had not cooled, would there have been a Black Death? Or the bubonic plague was to hang around to about 1750, when all of a sudden it just disappeared from Europe. Oh yes. You must learn that Orthodox Christianity, Eastern Orthodoxy, sometimes called Greek Orthodoxy, became the official religion of Russia. And it was largely as a result of Vladimir. Vladimir became an Orthodox Christian and married the Byzantine emperor's daughter. This later led the Russians to claim that they were the new Rome. When the Eastern Roman Empire, called the Byzantine Empire, died, the Russians said, well, I'm descended from one of the emperors, therefore he took on the title of Caesar or Tsar, and the Russian rulers held the title of Tsar until 1917. The Mongolians had conquered Russia and held it for 200 years. But the Prince of Moscow gained favor with the Mongolians, and they made him ruler of Russia. And that's when Kiev was replaced by Moscow. And after 200 years, Russia was able to throw the Mongolians out. But Mongolian influence is still there with them. All right. Of the Holy Roman Emperors at this period, the two of them I wanted you to learn was Frederick I, Frederick II. Both of these men were German, basically, but they tried to interfere in Italy. And the German emperors fought in Italy, so Germany, as a result, the German princes were able to create their own states. And it turned out the Holy Roman Emperor was weak in both Germany and Italy. It's believed if the Holy Roman Emperor had simply left Italy alone, they might have been able to unite Germany. As it turned out, both Germany and Italy were finally united in 1870. But that's jumping far ahead of the story. Otherwise, Italy and Germany would have become independent states. In the case of Italy, some of their states were Venice, Genoa, the Papal States, Naples, Sicily. In Germany, I have the states of Hanover, Brandenburg. Don't bother to memorize these. I just wanted to let you know that Germany, and the main one being Prussia. But Germany was disunited, Italy was disunited. Same thing, Frederick I tried to make Italy, not Germany, the center of his rule, and he failed. Right. I did mention Henry. Henry is the one who opposed the church by trying to appoint the bishops himself, but he's the one who had to bow down to the Pope because the Pope in his day was too powerful. Now later, the King of France, Philip the Fair, was able to, don't worry about Otto, he's not in the book anymore. Again, these notes are somewhat obsolete. Philip the Fair, I mentioned several times, he's the one who, this is not beyond the test, he's the one who destroyed the Templars in France. He's also the one who put the Pope in his place, said the Pope, oh hey, I'm not going to obey you. This is not here, but he instituted the Estates General, but the Estates General did not amount to much. But under him, France was the best run kingdom in Europe, the wealthiest and best run, and it was to remain that way pretty much until the 1700s. Now, I believe something. All right, I'm going to go back in time a little bit. Back to the beginning. Remember these two. William the Conqueror conquered England. The Vedas are associated with which group of people? What country? India. The worship of Jupiter with which country? Anybody know which group of people, which nation worships Jupiter? Rome. Excellent. Rome. Oh yes, Moses was a lawgiver for what country? Israel. Moses associated with Israel. Egyptian writing is known as hieroglyphics. Now, of the Crusades, let me see what I have listed them somewhere here a little bit later. Some of these notes are old and some of this stuff is not in the book. All right, right here. Okay, I hear the listing of them. First Crusade, the only one that could be called a military success. Second Crusade. Now here I use the term Saracens. That term is not used much anymore. Again, folk, I started teaching this class in the year 2000. It was 14 years ago. The same authors, but titles are a little bit different. The word Saracen, don't copy down, it will not be on the test. Saracen was another name for Muslim, by the way, for those of you who haven't guessed. They were called Moors in one group, Saracens by another group. Again, I have not updated these notes.